Welcome to the stream. Just getting up. Um, Thank you for the like. Just bear with me for a second or two here. Kill Welly, and you may hear another voice in the background. That's my mother. I just gotta go downstairs, feed my cat. I've been oversleeping lately, not sure why. Hope to address that in time, but yeah, been, uh, that's been a thing for me for a few days at this point, I want to say. Just gotta get myself up and moving. Oh my god, I've been muted for a bit now. Sorry about that. I must have done it without meaning to. Not sure how much of that you heard. Oops. Yeah. The reason the camera is off is because I'm doing stuff, and the phone's camera would be shaking a bit. So I don't want to disorient any of you. But let me get sorted, and then I shall turn it on. Nikki Q8Q. Interesting. What kind of headaches? AC Salvatore. Migraines? That's that's some real dedication. You know, sorry, I hit the lock button on my phone by mistake. um, as far as Christian Bale is concerned, when it comes to Batman, I've always felt as though his Batman was half great, half okay, or half great, um, a little okay, and a little bad. Let me explain what I mean by that. Basically, he was an excellent Bruce Wayne. He had the look for Batman. I loved every one of the suits they gave him. Wasn't the biggest fan of his Batmobile, but they were trying to be different, give him his own, identity, give it its own identity. Uh, I think Nolan was a bit too obsessed with trying to make Batman grounded, considering the fact that even though he is one of the more realistic superheroes, there is no reality in which you can actually make Batman grounded. A billionaire who learns every style or several styles of martial arts for the purposes of fighting crime. All the legal reasons why a billionaire would never be able to get his company to sign off on making the types of suits he would need to fight crime, all the gadgets he would require, the vehicles, weapons, so on and so forth, the computer, all that stuff. Um, and the fact that nobody would ever guess his identity. If a billionaire really did attempt to become a hero like Batman, they'd be in jail right away. They'd be found out pretty much on day one. And that's just the truth of it. Not to mention, even though his villains are more realistic, one of his villains literally was frozen to the point of hypothermic levels and needs to be kept in a chilly climate or he will die, which is scientifically improbable and impossible. Clayface is completely impossible to happen in reality. Um, so yeah, and then let's not even get started on all the problems with Venom. If you were to attempt to use Venom, you would immediately be dead upon administering it. So, yeah. He's not nearly as realistic as people make him out to be, and he never has been. But that's the thing with comics, is that comics are not supposed to be realistic necessarily. They're supposed to be you know, they're supposed to bend the rules a bit. And Christopher Nolan just never understood that. And it's a shame because, with a better director who truly understood Batman, Christian Bale would have been, in my honest opinion, the best Batman we ever got. He had the look, he had the presence, he had the acting for it. The film had a great score, had the right tone. Heath Ledger's performance was legendary as the Joker. What the films lacked was direction, and let's face it, they weren't really written by someone who understood Batman. They were written by somebody who probably knew bits and pieces of Batman, but didn't truly understand the character. Which is why we got that really bad WWE grunty voice when he puts the mask on instead of just Christian Bale trying to do, a sinister sounding voice that's a bit deep like this when he's playing Batman. And you don't have to. And then, even if he couldn't do that, why didn't they find another way to go about it? Maybe like a voice changer, right? I mean, you gotta get creative. That's one thing that I will give the Ben Affleck version of Batman is the voice changer was an amazing touch. Everything else about his Batman to me was either meh or terrible. Hello, Christian. How's it going? Also, thank you for the fourth like. It upsets me because I think Christian Bale could have become the Robert Downey Jr. of Batman. And I know people are going to say Michael Keaton, Michael Keaton, Michael Keaton. Let's face it, Michael Keaton was never a great Batman or Bruce. A curly haired Bruce Wayne with that facial structure and that build, no. That's not Batman. And Batman just standing there like a statue, barely moving, and then like moving every so often, like he's a robot or a mannequin that can, that has hinges inside of it. No, that's not Batman. Jack Nicholson was great. The Batmobile was amazing. The score was amazing. And the way the city looked was amazing. But Michael Keaton was an awful Batman. And that's just the truth. Bruce Wayne is not a curly haired man with that kind of facial structure. He basically looks like James Bond or like Archer from, the series Archer. He's supposed to be a very handsome looking, dark brown haired man that women just swoon over. And no disrespect to Michael Keaton, not trying to suggest that he's, bad looking, but he doesn't have that kind of face and he doesn't have that kind of hair. If I'm being honest, I think he would have been perfect for the role of Lex Luthor instead. But obviously, they weren't going to use him as Lex because they had Gene Hackman. And no disrespect to the late, great Gene Hackman, but he was not a good Lex in any way. Keaton would have been an amazing Lex in those films. You know, one of the things that's always bugged me about Batman, and I'm sure I've mentioned this time and time again on this channel in these streams, is the fact that people are obsessed with Batman having the physique of a UFC fighter or of a professional bodybuilder. Who cares? He doesn't need to be bulky just because the comics depict him that way. You need an actor to play Batman, not a bodybuilder, not a wrestler. You can't expect an actor to have the musculature of a Herculean athlete and be able to play the personality, the charisma, and the intelligence of Bruce Wayne and Batman, as well as the, you know, the ability to strike fear and intimidation. It's just not going to happen. So people really need to get over their obsession with him having massive muscles. Just like people need to get over Wolverine looking a certain way. The personality is what matters most. So tired of that argument. I mean, but what do I know, right? Now, that's not me trying to say, even for a second, that Batman shouldn't be muscular. No, not at all. But his presence is more important than his build. Mm-hmm. And isn't it interesting how people see pictures of an actor in a role and say, oh my god, he's perfect for the role? Just based on how they look. And yet, people looked at Pattinson, they were like, oh no, he's a terrible fit. But then they heard the voice and they were like, oh my god, I'm sold. Now, I know it's a bit hypocritical of me because I just, bashed Michael Keaton for his Bruce Wayne and Batman. But he just wasn't a good Bruce Wayne or Batman. He just wasn't. He didn't have that voice. He didn't have that look. He didn't look like the most, what women would consider to be the most beautiful man alive. That's why they went with actors like George Clooney, right? Because at one point in time, he was probably considered to be the hottest man alive. He could have been an amazing Batman. Problem was bad directing, bad writing, not terrible casting. People get so hung up on the bad writing and directing that they don't see the potential that an actor possesses. Because he did have the Batman voice. Now, I will admit that Pattinson, to me, doesn't have the right build or look necessarily for Bruce Wayne, but they managed to touch him up a bit. Um, I always kind of felt like Michael Keaton's face was a little too round for the role, right? And again, I mean, no disrespect to the man, even though it sounds like I am, but again, that curly hair, and no. Never saw the love people have for him. It was just because he was the first to ever be put in that role in live action. I guarantee you, if they had gone with an actor with that hair color, the right hair color, the right face, the right eyes, people would have been playing a completely different tune and singing that actor's praises instead. It's only because he was the first. Deep down, I don't think they actually believe he's the best. It's nostalgia. And we all have it. Just like my nostalgia will always prevent me from seeing anyone other than Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Now, I think I can make more of a case for Robert Downey Jr. than someone could for Michael Keaton as Batman, but it's entirely possible that an actor could come around at some point in time and somehow, some way do a better job as Tony Stark Iron Man than Robert Downey Jr. did. Although I highly doubt that will be possible. That's the microwave. Sorry for the beeping. We'll have to see what happens with this supposed reboot, with this new casting they go with. If I had to guess, it's not going to be an American actor. It's probably going to be someone British or someone else from a European country that plays Tony Stark. And, nothing against European actors, of course. But you know, there are plenty of American actors that could play those roles. The only reason why you go with British or Australian or actors from other parts of the world seemingly more often is because they're well established. You don't want to go with unknowns because you're afraid to take chances. Which also means that by not taking chances, you're not allowing actors who may be incredibly talented to get their time in the sun. I think I meant to say time in the spotlight, but you know what I meant. And I feel like I probably said that before as well. Whatever. You know, that scene in Endgame where he hands the arc reactor over to Steve and tells him, you put that on and you hide or something. To me, I feel it would have been great if that was hinting at there not needing to be an Iron Man anymore. Like, that anyone could use that suit now when necessary to fight. And I think that would have been a great way to have sent it as a send off. Like, you know, Iron Man's last gift or last role or last duty was building like a series of those just in case something were to happen to him so that others could don the armor and use it to defend the planet in his stead. I think that's what should be happening in this new Avengers movie. And I think that information should have been given to Peter as his confidant, as well as to other Avengers that he could trust. Not to become Iron Man, but to basically say Iron Man is no more because I am no more. But the technology outlives me. And then you could say that he maybe put in place a protocol before he was, you know, no longer alive. Maybe he even believed it was going to be his last, uh, you know, his last venture, that he wasn't going to be around much longer due to what they were up against. And he had the foresight to have more of those built and stored somewhere and told Pepper and told, you know, a group of certain people and, you know, put like in some kind of secret authorization to where if there's ever a threat that's as threatening as Thanos or greater, these suits will be there for the Avengers to wield. Because he knew there were members of the Avengers who couldn't tangle with universal, you know, threats, right? And those suits obviously couldn't either, but they gave you a greater chance. Um, and I think it would actually be have been amazing writing if, you know, during the Doomsday movie when it comes out, Steve comes in during that scene where Thor says, you know, in the trailer, we need a miracle. He says, Thor, I've got to tell you something. Tony predicted something like this might happen. And he made something just in case. Basically showing that that scene when he gives that arc reactor to Cap and tells him to put it on was foreshadowing him making it so that there'd be more of those for underpowered Avengers to wear those armors against significant threats. And they wouldn't all look the same. They'd probably be color coded or something. Um, and basically the Thunderbolts would wear those suits in combat against Doom. Now that's not going to happen, unfortunately. But it would have been amazing. It really would have. The soup is not warm enough, but whatever. Maybe he could have called it Protocol. Um, Cave. Referencing the fact that he had to find a way to get out of that cave and be able to fight his way past all those people and make it to safety. Um, because what we know about Tony as a futurist is he knows he's obviously not immortal. And I don't think he's gonna want to just let those suits sit there and collect dust once he's no longer around. Because he knows those suits are powerful weapons to be used in defense of the planet. And that's the reason why he kept upgrading them, advancing their weaponry, making them more and more powerful, was, to face each new theoretical challenge. People may not like the nanotechnology because of the way it looks, but if a scientist had the ability to build suits like that to defend the Earth against extraterrestrial threats, let me tell you, they absolutely would do that. It's not about looks, it's about capability. And you never know. In 100 years, suits like that may actually become a thing. May actually be possible for a tech suit like that to exist where weapons can seemingly just come out of them as if they weren't there in the first place. There have been articles every once in a while that suggest that the future of science is going to look a lot like magic. So, you know, But yeah, that's what I would have done. And look, I know it sounds like I'm hating on Doomsday, but the truth is, I really would want it to be a great movie. But there's just nothing there from where I'm sitting to suggest that it will be a good movie. A good follow up to Endgame, a good Avengers film in any way. I've given my reasons. They are all, I believe, solid. They're severely underpowered. And you saw in that trailer how effortlessly Doom stopped Thor in his tracks. With a single hand, he blocked Stormbreaker. Like it was nothing. If my idea or something similar to it was to be brought in, if it was like Cap comes in, Steve comes in and says, Thor, Tony predicted something like this might happen. Brings him into a secret room, shows him all these armors. Maybe there's a funny little scene where Thor's like, oh, this is awesome, which one is mine? And then Cap says, actually, he only built these for the Avengers who were, how did he put it? Not quite so godlike. That basically he would have built these suits for the likes of Hawkeye, Black Widow, Captain America, Bucky, Sam Wilson, you know, who was Falcon but is now Captain America. I'm trying to think, is there anyone I'm leaving out? Um, and any potential newcomers also, you know. Anyway, I feel like that would be very much on brand for Marvel for such a scene to happen, where Thor's like, "Oh, these are really cool. Which one is mine?" He says, "Actually, Thor, he built these for myself and the other Avengers who, as Tony put it, don't possess the powers of a god." Now, before anyone says, oh, well, Cap would never. Let's be real here. Cap would have got pulling. Cap would have got pulled apart effortlessly by Thanos if he wanted to. He had a rinky-dink shield and whatever that suit was. He didn't have anything enhancing his strength beyond what the serum already did for him. He was never going to be able to take the fight directly to Thanos. And I think this scene could show that Tony Stark would realize, you know what? I've been selfish. I've claimed to be building this technology. Basically, this would be his way of taking that suits around the world concept, but making it better, where it's not AI controlled suits around the world, it's suits around the world piloted by individuals who he can trust. And those people are the Avengers. And let's not forget, we did see them don those suits when they had to time travel. Yes, they were for the purposes of time travel, but they were suits, which every one of them wore. So it's not as if there couldn't be a scenario where they have to say to themselves, look, I wouldn't usually do this, but because we have no fighting chance otherwise, we gotta do it. I think I'm going to reiterate this in a later stream, which is called What I Would Do If I Was Writing Doomsday Part 2, maybe 3, whatever. Um, because I think this would have been a great way to end Tony's arc. For him to have come to the realization that having suits around the world wasn't the problem. It was trusting artificial intelligence to occupy those suits. It was realizing that freedom is necessary. Human morality, um, you know, is necessary. And that if you're going to have suits around the world, number one, you're only going to use them when absolutely necessary. Tony needed one at all times because he was quite literally a regular human who was just incredibly intelligent. He had no powers without that suit. He had no fighting ability really without that suit. He had no weaponry without that suit. He basically was the suit. But for the rest of them who had the combat skills or the powers, scratch that. For the rest of them who had the training and the combat skills, they didn't have the powers necessary to go up against the big leagues when the world was threatened. So they would need it during those times. Anywho, Um, I think a friend of mine is coming over soon, so I'm going to end the stream here. Thank you all for attending. I will probably be doing one again later today. Uh, Please like, comment, and subscribe. As always, I really do appreciate all of your continued support. Hope to see you in the next one. As usual, the truth is, I am Iron Man.